So I think at 12 or 13, started selling sweets, and I went to a decent grammar school. At home, didn't get pocket money, and the real pivotal moment for me was when everyone was talking about PlayStation. The beauty of it is you are in a safe space, you're in a safe environment. You're encouraged, or I guess you're encouraging yourself to be curious. Property wasn't necessarily a passion for me. My passion was about how backwards it was, how undisrupted the process was. Real estate agents in the UK were the second most hated profession after politics.
Thank you so much for clicking on this episode of The Millennial Entrepreneur. The ambition of the podcast is to show relatable stories from young entrepreneurs doing some incredible things to inspire the next generation, including you listening wherever you are. We've been doing this podcast for over 3 years and the ambition has not changed. The only thing that has changed is the scale of where we want to go. We want to bring on bigger guests for you guys to show more and more relatable and inspiring stories from young entrepreneurs across the world. The majority of you guys listening haven't subscribed to the podcast yet. All you have to do is click that subscribe button wherever you're listening on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and that will allow us to bring on bigger guests and ask the questions to them that you really want to hear. And it really is that simple. So thank you again for clicking on the podcast and enjoy the episode. So take me back, where did this whole journey begin?
So, I guess during my time at school, I was pretty interested in business. It was always a massive passion for me that I kind of developed over. So started off with the quintessential journey of any entrepreneur, which is selling sweets.
Yeah.
So about
Same.
So I think at 12 or 13, started selling sweets, and I went to a decent grammar school, but at home didn't get pocket money, and the real pivotal moment for me was when everyone was talking about PlayStation. I think it was PS3 at the time. Showing my age a bit now. PS3 at the time, and I didn't have, we couldn't afford to buy it. My parents couldn't afford to buy it. So my way of getting one, that was my strong desire at the time. Yeah. Is basically was selling sweets.
It's a lot of sweets.
I actually made enough in about 2 weeks.
Wow.
Because I bought something that was really popular. I went wholesale, so I bought them at the price and sold them at the same price the local shops did. And obviously had a captive market because no one could leave school grounds for lunch.
I've said this before on a recording. I don't understand why schools clamp down on something like that. I know there's I know there's a lot of health and stuff like that, but every single I'd say the majority of the people that I've had on this podcast, a lot of their journeys start off by something like that.
100%. I think because the beauty of it is you are in a safe space, you're in a safe environment.
Yeah.
And you're encouraged, or I guess you're encouraging yourself to be curious. And one of the most essential ingredients for entrepreneurship is curiosity, right?
I agree with you.
Entrepreneurship is about solving a problem, and the problem at the time just so happens to be that people don't have sweets and they want them.
Yeah.
Right? And I think, and a great entrepreneur that I know as kind of almost like a mentor, he actually runs a collection of schools. He tells his kids who go to schools, he's the chief exec, he tells them to break the rules. He actually rewards them based on breaking the rules in his own school because he understands the limitations or the box that puts you in.
Yeah.
And what that can do to children over time as they grow into adults.
I think I've had issues with certain people because I do break rules. I'm saying this on a recording, but I think there is some element where you need to go against the grain to certain degrees to become an entrepreneur, because you can't accept the way that things are being done, right? And I think that honestly, what sparks that level of creativity to do things differently.
Yeah, 100%. I think entrepreneurship, I guess, down to its core definition, is about solving a problem that exists in the world.
Yeah. And
you have to be uncomfortable or disapprove of the way things are done in the world at the moment in your certain industry or field or area that you want to get into, to be able to then spot the problem and solve it. And I think breaking rules is one thing, and there's different ways to go about it, right? Entrepreneurship is about spotting a problem, solving it by serving other people. You're breaking the rules or convention to serve other people and solve a problem in a positive. Obviously, the flip side of that is breaking rules and solving a not serving people, and that's when you start to get into, I guess, territory. So entrepreneurship fundamentally is about serving other people, and I think as long as you see it that way, and as long as you see that as the purpose of entrepreneurship, I think there's a very different drive to that, or very different definition to breaking the rules, right?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So where did the real estate business come in? So you were at school. Because you started young, right?
Yes. So again, was pretty experimental throughout school. Got really interested, was studying economics and politics and history and trying to get kind of a stronger world view on things. And I thought, how does the world currently work?
Yeah.
Trying to really get into that and understand it, but also looking and understanding disruption at the time, right? So we're in the era where Amazon's starting to boom, Uber, and basically the birth or rebirth of the internet and how it previously long-standing, I think Netflix at the time as well. I thought this is really interesting because these businesses are making a massive difference in a very, very short space of time, utilizing something as powerful as the internet. And we've all got access to it, right? So the internet's created accessibility for entrepreneurship more than it ever has before, ever. So that's when I started getting really interested in have problems that need solving. I've been very open and honest to say that property wasn't necessarily a passion for me. My passion was about how backwards it was, how undisrupted the process was. So real estate agents in the UK were the second most hated profession after politicians. And that's bearing in mind that they are the custodians of the biggest that most people own, which is their home. Something so personal to you, but you hate the person dealing with the transaction. How does that make sense?
Yeah.
And at the same time, you're giving away 1%, maybe 2%, sometimes 3% of the property value for someone to come round. Here's the bathroom, here's the bedroom. And of course, I'm simplifying it quite a lot, right? That to me felt like there was a better way to do that. So when I was 6, started building an app called House Smart. It was an app which connected buyers and sellers directly. But long story short, needed a lot of capital to get that off the ground because you're disrupting not just real estate selling process, but the buying process. So for example, with Rightmove and Zoopla, you're disrupting that process as well, which is a massive goal. So came on to 17, so during my A-levels, carried on looking into the market, and that's when Doorstep, my first kind of, I guess, proper real estate business was born. Let's cut a lot of the overheads in the process. Let's connect, let's have a team of agents across the country, operate from one head office and use technology to help us get to places quicker. So automating a lot of the processes through technology, and that allowed us to charge 99 quid to sell a property rather than several £1,000s.
I just don't understand how you understood that problem at 16. Like a lot of the entrepreneurs that I speak to, they've encountered the problem themselves and solved that problem with technology, like you just mentioned. But you were 16, you've never bought a house, like you've never gone close to a house, right? I assume. So like, I'm interested in how you actually stumbled across that.
Sure. So it actually comes from quite, I guess, an early stage experience for me, which was, so I'm a carer to both my parents who are deaf, and we moved out from Hertfordshire into London. So we moved out from Hertfordshire into London around, probably when I was about 11 or 12 years old. And in that process, that's when my first interaction ever with real estate agents. So this selling our property in Hertfordshire.
Yeah.
I mean, you're moving it to London. I know it's very expensive compared to somewhere outside of London. And we needed every penny. Every penny mattered.
Yeah.
And that's when I first got a sense of what did they actually do, the real estate agent, which frankly was nothing special. The market was very busy at the time. And they charged us a lot of money. And every penny really mattered because we had to rent for several years, couldn't afford a property in London, and we were kind of between houses. And that, to me, I felt actually that was where I think the core of the problem came to. The naturally seeing other people go through that experience and understanding the market better, it was a combination of a problem that my parents experienced family, but also understanding the market better. And that's kind of where I stumbled upon the property space.
Got you. That's really interesting. So you understood the problem very well. You understood that these guys charge a lot of money for things that, frankly, like anyone can really do.
Yeah.
Shout out to the real estate agent. But like, I guess what was the sort of next step for you? You were 16 years old. Like, what you didn't have any sort of experience within tech. You were selling sweets, I guess. Like, so what was the next step there?
So I started obviously working on that evolved version of the business, which was Doorsteps, around 17 years old. And for me, it was about learning and experimenting, which I've realized that entrepreneurship over time, having started other businesses since then, it is just a continuous learning journey. You're constantly investing in yourself, and it was a space I knew nothing about. So I had two choices in terms of my mindset at the time, was either take the approach, scarcity, I don't know enough about the market, Should I be getting into a space that I don't understand or know about well enough? Or the opposite, which is to disrupt the status quo. Surely you're better suited to do that coming from outside the status quo. And that fresh perspective and lack of baggage that I had gave me the power or the confidence to say, actually, no, I am the right person to disrupt this space, or I'm one of the right people to do this, because I haven't been in the space for long enough. Because people that come into the space or have been in the space already have pre-built preconceptions of how things are done.
Yeah.
And going back to what we were saying, you need to go against the grain. And if you have the do that, willing to have the confidence, ability to do that, it's about approaching it from a different perspective. So that's when I started kind of building, guessing the website. So very basic kind of freelancers abroad, borrowed some money from family basically to get the basic website up and running.
Yeah.
And then my focus in that time was largely proof of concept. And that was spending hours on kind of market research, the basic website. This is all during my A-levels.
Yeah.
I had one customer that actually found our website during my A-levels.
What were they paying for? Like, what was...
So 99 quid was for us to take photos and put their property up on the market.
On the market?
So Rightmove,
Zoopla,
and sell it.
Right.
Now, because it was the first one that was completely unexpected, I had zero infrastructure in place. So I went to the property myself.
Wait. Actually, I want to stop you there. That's people think that you need to have all the infrastructure in place before you start processing that first customer. That's wrong. Like, well, it's not wrong. It's just that I don't think it's an efficient way of doing things. What you just did there was you set up the front sort of facing people will encounter when it comes to this sort of service. Someone paid for it, and you're like, okay, now the work starts. Now I know that someone's interested, and now I can actually, execute and actually infrastructure, rather than building infrastructure up front.
Yeah, 100%. I think the reason for that is, well, start now, get perfect later, right?
Yeah.
In any journey, whether it's entrepreneurship or anything else of, I guess, high performance, the hardest part is starting, right? People find it a lot easier to finish the job once they've started. And getting it out there and deeply minimizes your risk.
I think you are right. Like, starting is the hardest part, but I think people have a wrong perception of what starting is. People think starting means that you have to build everything from the ground up. When actually, as you said, the internet's made it easier than ever to actually start a proof of concept, to test things out very cheaply. Like, so you start fairly, compared to a lot of, previous generations, it's a lot easier than it was before. Go on.
Yeah, absolutely. We should be insanely grateful for the access to technology we have now, right?
Yeah.
If you have a phone or a laptop or both, you can start something. And frankly, believing that we don't have the resources to do that if you do things is either frankly being ungrateful or unaware, right? We have access to these things. Even a social media account now is an enabler to start monetizing or start a business in your own way.
I agree.
And remember, business is everything from, I guess, like I said, a home bakery all the way to a huge billion-dollar entrepreneur, or Elon Musk, for example. That's massive different scales of entrepreneurship. It doesn't mean you can't start or don't have the to. And most people, I guess, use perfectionism as a veil for, right? And that is the problem. People are scared to start, and they use perfectionism as a way of deterring or deferring that start because they think they need to be perfect.
Yeah.
But imagine spending 3 years, hundreds of thousands of pounds in a proposition to realise actually the market doesn't want it when you go to market.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
Right. The market doesn't lie. The market
Yeah.
customer is king. No matter how you think your proposition is, unless the market wants it to, it means nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
So someone paid £99. What are they paying for?
Just to list the property on Rightmove and Zoopla and for us to get it sold.
Take photos
so,
and all that.
So I didn't know what to do, right? So I went down to the shelf and started taking photos.
Was it local to you? Was it far? Like
East Sussex, which is hours away from where I was. So I
paid. Did you open this up nationwide from the beginning?
From the beginning, yeah. Which
so stupid.
Yeah, it was.
But yeah, go on.
So we're nationwide, thinking that no one's going to see the website, no one's going to see it. Right now, it's just for me to market test. And someone went online and paid, and I thought, he's paid.
You got to deliver now.
I've got to deliver, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to not provide. I'm not going to turn the customer down, right? This is my first ever customer, Ian, which I'll never forget ever.
No, you never do.
And my brother-in-law at the time, or my sister's boyfriend at the time, I said, I'll give you 20 quid. You drive me down there so I can take some photos of this guy's house. And they thought I was crazy, right? My family thought I was crazy. And
Didn't have a driving license.
Didn't have a driving license. I was 16 at the time, I think, maybe 17. Meant to be studying for my A-levels. And he said, great, let's do it. So I went down, took the photos, and we got the property sold. And he gave raving. He had 2 properties back to back, so it was 198 quid, technically, which was great.
And you didn't take any commission. It was just that upfront £99 fee. And
it was a £500,000 house with a swimming pool.
Wow.
So he actually saved probably about 7 or 8 grand between the 2 houses.
Yeah.
And he was amazed. He sung our praises. He went online. He wrote reviews. He told friends locally, right, which gave us a couple more customers later down the line. But that showed me proof of concept, and more importantly, confidence for me that this could work. Like, hold on, he saved that much money. Imagine how much money we could save every household in Britain if there was a better way to do it.
Yeah.
And it also showed me the power of word of mouth. He got 5-star reviews for us online. He wrote 5-star reviews for us. And that word of mouth was more powerful than any paid marketing I could have done at the time. Anything. Because credit comes from other consumers. So, yeah, continued on that journey for the rest of that year. And then when it came to deciding on whether to go to university or not, I got pretty good grades at A-levels, so I had choices. So I deferred entry to university initially, which was looking between Oxford and UCL. And I thought that proof of concept stuck with me. I thought, I want to give this a go.
Yeah.
And then spent probably hundreds of hours a week, week on week for the first 3 months, knocking on doors, trying to get that second customer, and it never came.
Really?
Just consistently knocking on doors in winter, door knocking on properties that had for sale signs, thinking, right, this is a great acquisition strategy.
Yeah.
Saying, right, come and say house for 99 quid. And people shut the door on me.
Wait, why do you think that is? Like, you just, proved worked, right? So why was that second customer so difficult to get?
So I think at the time was the market. So it was so difficult.
What year was it?
So this is 2017, I think.
Okay.
2016, late 2016. And people found it so difficult to believe that you could sell your house for 99. Firstly, right? A too good to be true feeling. But also the fact that...
you were like scamming.
Exactly, yeah. The fact that I was a 17-year-old kid on their doorstep asking for them to pay their money. And they thought, this just doesn't make sense. This is real.
Yeah.
So went through cold calling, took on commission-only salespeople, took on old school friends who were on gap years. I tried pretty much everything. And eventually I dropped it and said, right, we're going to sell people's homes for free. I want to show them that we can do this, that this new technology-driven way of working works. Which, by the way, we had no tech at that point, right? Because we didn't afford to have the infrastructure. But eventually, word of mouth grew because we continued to take people on for free. We continued to get properties online. And eventually, a good word of mouth, good reviews, good growth. And by middle of 2017, we raised our first round, which was 400 grand, basically, online investment.
How did you, but even like offering to sell their houses for free still sounds like a scam, right? Even though like it's not, but like, so even still, like, how did you get those second customers?
I guess at the time it was just offering a risk position and being honest.
Yeah.
Being honest, saying that we're a new business. Here's what we do. Here's what we propose to do. And bear in mind, these were people selling their properties on Gumtree, for example, right? So people that didn't really like estate agents either. So look, we are here to be the antithesis to estate agents. We are here your perception of estate agents. Our mission is not just to save you money. We think estate agents are crap, and we want to change the way the industry works. And some people resonated with that. Yeah. So I think again, it's finding that problem to solve that solves a deep desire for people, not just save a bit of cash, but actually you're on Gumtree because you don't like estate agents. How about we join you in that, but we can do the job better and on your behalf. And some people resonated, and thankfully, and that's when it started to grow.
Yeah, I think being transparent with people, it doesn't just go for selling to regular people, but even B2B, and just being honest that you're a small business. And like, for instance, my business, we just had a big pitch to, I won't say their name, but like a huge bank that everyone knows, massive investment bank. And we're a tiny business. There's like 5 of us, like us. But we were honest. We were like, yeah, we're a small team, but we'll dedicate a lot of our time to you, type of thing. Like, I think being honest and like, I guess pretending that you're a big business, like I think that is actually a strength. And yeah, being honest about your mission as well, like what you just mentioned. So not just focusing on this is the process, but this is why we're doing it. This is Absolutely. Like why we were born. I think that's, again, very important to emphasize when it comes to selling or like showing people what you're about.
Yeah, I absolutely, completely agree. I think people, ultimately, if you're a business and you can't control that that's the case, right? If you're at a certain stage, you need to think about, can you control the fact that you're a certain size? If not, don't worry about it. But sitting there being anxious about the fact that you're not a certain size and therefore having a sense of we're not good enough because of XYZ, it's complete nonsense, right? It's your mindset and how you approach it. So again, let's go back to the fundamentals of, I think, confidence in that case. When you're approaching a big pitch or a big business or something where you shouldn't be, you should feel a sense of imposter syndrome. Because imposter syndrome means you're sitting outside of your comfort zone, and sitting outside the zone is exactly where you grow.
So imposter syndrome is good.
I think it's essential to be, depending on your perspective on it. So the way I see it is everyone is on their own journey. You are ahead of many people, and there's many people ahead of you. But again, instead of fretting about where they are or where someone else is, the fact that you are feeling a sense of imposter syndrome means you're uncomfortable, and uncomfortable is how growth happens. So if you can lean into that, it will give you a much greater sense of confidence in the places where you are, right? And I think I had lunch a few years ago with John Roberts, the founder of AO.com. Really, really great guy, amazing businessman. And he said, keep putting yourself in places where you don't belong to be.
Yeah.
Right, and that stuck with me because I thought that is spot on. Because how do we grow if we're constantly in places where we're comfortable, we're kind of support this person in the room? You know, how do you grow as a person when you do that? And I think it's just not possible. So I think I completely agree with what you said.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So let's move on from that real estate business. What was the sort of like journey there? So you started selling the propositions for, and then I assume like you went back to the £99 model once you got more done. And so yeah, what was the sort of journey up until sort of like recently?
So that was a really interesting journey. We kind of built a lot of traction. So as I said, we raised our first round of funding in mid-2017, and that was for 400,000. And that was starting to kickstart growth, and we got a lot of PR after that, which was great because it gave us a lot of organic.
I was reading about it.
Yeah. So that would have been end of 2017. And yeah, because we were valued quite highly because of the market at the time, basically.
I think it was more because of your age at the time. I think it was like one of those things where now it's fairly commonplace for just like 22, 3-year-olds to get funded to that level of scale.
Yeah.
Whereas back then, I didn't really see that many people doing it.
Yeah.
I think that's why I remember reading it, because at the time, I think I was like same age. I think I am the same age as you. I remember reading it, being like, wow, like that was before I met you, like a long time before I met you. But I remember reading that being like, I didn't know that we can do that. I didn't know that it's the opportunities there for people our age to actually be able to do that. Like, yeah, a big motivation of why I started this podcast really is to show that you can. But yeah, that's why I remember reading it.
No, it's really, really nice to hear and really valuable, because I wasn't actually a fan of the PR and the public platform and everything else. I think kind of being more private or kind of confidence, but personally is more admirable. But I think the reason I ended up kind of pushing it, because it grew the business a lot.
Yeah, of course.
Or ended up kind of, I guess, being part of it was because it grew the business a lot. But also exactly what you said. If my story can even spark for one person out there to say, oh wow, that's doable, and remove some limiting belief, change the mindset of one person to say, oh, we can do this. Because going back to what we were saying about schools, I believe the education system is putting people in a box over time to say, you can't do this, don't do this, don't do that. So if that sparked and say, oh, you actually can do that, right? It's doable. That point of reference for them changes entirely. So that was, I guess, a positive benefit out of that. So after that PR, it grew quite rapidly after that for the next couple of years. So we raised funding again in 2018, so the following year. and that was about 900,000. So we just done just shy of 1.5 million then, and that was to fund obviously the business growth.
Yeah.
So a lot of marketing, again, really pushing that word of mouth, which was fantastic. We got to the point where by kind of 2020, we were the third largest online estate agency. We'd sold over £1 billion worth of homes. There's about 60 of us in the team, including kind of the agents across the country. And we saved customers, more importantly, over about 20 million pounds in estate agency fees. So that core goal, the reason we existed in the first place, was starting to finally come to fruition, which was great. And that led to over 5,000 reviews as well online, which again, that mission of changing the perception of estate agency. Oh, it's a young Asian guy with a bunch of people across the country with no physical office space. That was what we're trying to do to change the perception.
And how did you grow it to that sort of scale? Right, you said that when you were first trying it, you tried like a marketing thing in the book, like you hired your friends on gap years, and like you did it door to door. Like, so what was the sort of key thing that grew you from that once you got funding to the level where, you know, you were the third largest estate agent in the UK?
So I think at the time I realized that actually the difficulty with that market is there is no avatar consumer, right? Just because someone supports Arsenal football team and they're aged between 40 and 50, they're going to be selling their property. There is no demographic to that, right? There is some vague overview of the demographic of people that own a home.
Yeah.
But how do you catch someone that's selling a property? So for me, that was the biggest marketing challenge I've ever faced, even to date. So actually my focus was the product, the people, the service, right? I thought if we can invest heavily enough in our service, in our platform and the tech, so basically start with the customer and work backwards, constantly on what does the consumer need? What makes the user journey better?
Yeah.
What makes their lives easier? And how do we encourage them to talk about us based on a positive journey? We can then grow. So really it genuinely was organic, word of mouth driven growth, focusing on what the customer needs were.
I think that's like a more effective approach than what I've seen a lot of other people do, when it's like, I think both are relevant, to be fair, but they focus on quantitative demographic metrics. So they focus on age, gender, where they live. Like it's all very quantitative. Whereas I think those qualitative customer persona details are actually very, if not more important than that. So it's like, what motivates them as people? Like, how do they think about certain things? Like all of that stuff lets you paint a good picture of like who these people. And yes, you're like, one might support Arsenal, one might, I don't know, be a farmer. Like they're just very different people. However, their motivations and what drives them as people when it comes to selling houses are probably the same. Like they don't mind going non-traditional. They don't mind like looking at alternative solutions and all that type of thing, right? I think it's probably went through as like the journey is like, how do I define these people? And then like you thought more like on the qualitative approach.
Yeah, absolutely that. So it was trying to understand what is that journey before they sell a property.
Yeah.
Right? What are they doing? How are they researching? And as you said, what are their motivations? So what are the key reasons that people look to sell a property? And something you'll see is actually largely quite emotive. About to have a child.
Yeah.
So birth or death, generally, divorce, marriage. It's a very emotive key milestones in the journey, which is why the process is so emotional for people as well.
I see.
So for us, that's why, again, service was so key, because...
And you can't capture that through like quantitative stuff, really.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I think a lot of that is investing in the people we had, and I think we could have gone a lot further, but I think for how far we did come is investing in our team to really take the time to understand that. Customer service staff who actually care. You know, caring is underrated, right?
Yeah.
For us, it's simplicity and actually giving a crap. So people actually care about the person on the other end of the phone, which is hard to do, right? When you've got, you know, at our peak, we were getting 800-900 inbound calls a day.
Wow.
And that's with all of our infrastructure technology-wise as well, right? So a lot of things were automated, but we're still getting 800-900 calls a day. So it's hard always to tell a customer service member of staff, you've got to take 100 calls today, but you've actually got to care about each one.
Yeah.
And that comes in the ethos and really the fluffy stuff that takes time to build, and also showing that you care right, as a management team in a leadership fashion, or the rest of the team as well.
Okay, so I guess the key growth there was build the product where people would recommend it. It is that word of mouth again.
Yeah, especially in this space for sure.
Okay, got you. And then what was the sort of like the transition? So you raised that much money. Where is it up until now?
So after we raised that money, obviously went through COVID. So the pandemic was pretty difficult for everyone, and I guess for most businesses, but we're very grateful to have come out of that profitable, because people did look to digital solutions.
A lot of people are selling their houses as well, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So more transactions in the space at some point. People looked to digital offerings and solutions and were more aware of them, I guess. And the government had a lot of relief programs. So we had a pretty strong year, and obviously our strongest year in that year. But during the pandemic, I also started a separate social enterprise called AKR, which at the time we became a DWP partner, having no experience in the space. I basically wanted to help young people at the time, because so at the time, so during the pandemic, I started a social enterprise called AKR, and youth unemployment grew to about 25% during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So for me, I felt I sat in that age category, which was 16 to 24, I think it was at the time. And I just joined the Prince's Trust Rise campaign as a board member, so I was supporting their mission around supporting young people into enterprise, into work. And I thought, how do I get more involved in this? Because I almost had that itch. Actually, I could be delivering more value to the world than just this business alone, wrongly. And that's when I started AKR. So social enterprise, which worked with the DWP, so the government start program. We had a pipeline of over 500-600 people that we were putting into work, which was great. Then obviously when the Kickstart scheme ended, we kind of started pivoting into traineeships, apprenticeships, and now on the journey to becoming a registered training provider with Ofsted. So that's when I made the transition out of Doorsteps, so kind of left the management team in charge, and I thought I wanted to spend a bit of time on the social enterprise and looking at social impact as a whole.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my transition during 2021, I guess, so a year and a bit ago.
So, but you were doing the real estate business at the same time as a social enterprise?
Yes, so there was a big crossover between the two, but at one point I then took a step back from the real estate business, kind of mid-one, to focus on the social enterprise and also look at what are the problems in the world that I wanted to solve, because I realised about myself that what I really enjoyed about the journey is the building. So I'm very passionate about startups.
That's the question I was going to ask you, because like you said that real estate wasn't your passion, then you moved on to social enterprise, and we'll talk about your next business as well. Like they're all very different. Like, so you're not motivated by solving a problem within a certain industry and making people's lives better in that industry. Like, so what is the motivation there to start different things?
Good question. I think it's still one that I'm figuring out, to be entirely honest. And I think I've noticed that entrepreneurship itself is a passion for me. So I think there's a micro and kind of a macro based motivation or reason I'm committed to doing what I do.
Yeah.
So on a macro level, my passion is entrepreneurship and building startups. So taking something from idea to reality, that journey is very, very exciting for me. It's very fast paced, and it's kind of the environment that I like to be in terms of building, fast paced, making mistakes, learning. And I've built, I think, a lot of resilience to that journey. You know, with Doorsteps, we almost ran out of cash 3 times, right, in that journey. Like literally 2 or 3 weeks runway. And your back's against the wall. You've got to, sadly, slash everyone's pay, get rid of people, and rebuild from there. And we need to do that. And it was scary for me at the time, but looking back, it was actually quite interesting. Because what I've realised about entrepreneurship is there is no end goal. The beauty of entrepreneurship, the person you become in the process.
Yeah, see, I've always had issue with this, because it's like, I'm actually motivated. I've discovered that about myself, where like, I keep trying to like build and build and build. And before I thought it was because I want to get to an end goal. So I was like, okay, if I just like it's one big client, or like if I build this new product, then like I would have made it. Or like if I won this award, then I would have made it. But I've done those, and like probably so have you, getting funding, getting all that PR coverage. But that feeling doesn't that itch isn't scratched. Like it doesn't go away. So it's just like I had moments in my life where I was like, am I like broken? Like what is going on in here where like I can't be satisfied? I don't know if you have a similar thing.
Yeah, totally. I think I completely agree. And that's when I think over the last few years, my focus did shift to, and I know everyone says it's the journey destination,
Yeah.
but genuinely think deeply about what that looks like. So for me, what I've realized, my biggest fear, sometimes it can come from a place of fear, right? My biggest fear is sitting there at 80 years old with regrets, looking back. The scariest thing for me is someone looking into my eyes and seeing regret that I didn't fulfill my full potential.
Yeah, there's this quote that I'm not a quote sort of person at all, but there is one quote that stuck with me and it still sticks with me now. It's like a person has two pains and they have to endure one of them, the pain of regrets or the pain of discipline. Mm-hmm. And I love that quote so much. I don't know who said it, but it's like, yeah, it is an amazing quote.
Absolutely. One that was actually, I'll hit back with a quote. It might be appropriate now, is life's biggest burden is having nothing to carry. Right, and that's genuinely how I feel. Yeah. Right, it's the past. It's how you decide. And some people want a simpler life and don't need that, right? And it's not a problem. It's not an issue. But I think the problem starts to come when you start to attach goals. And psychologically speaking, there's something called an arrival fallacy, which is you're talking about, if I get to this, then I will feel that. Yeah. Never happens.
Never happens, I know.
Because you get there and the goalposts have moved.
Yeah.
Oh, right, I thought it would be an Audi that made me happy, but now I want a Lamborghini.
Yeah. And
it's an endless cycle. So if you can shift your focus to, are you committed to the process? Is fulfilling, or is that person you're becoming, is that's what making you happy? Because happiness is ensued, not pursued.
So how have you like found happiness, I guess? Like, because if you're like similar to me, where you must have gone on this journey where it's like, okay, you realize that these achievements and things don't actually fulfill you. It's more like the journey that fulfills you. So it's just a continuous process. So how do you change your happiness perspective to the end goal, to the process? Because I know a lot of young people suffer with this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's aligning it to that process massively, right? I think the first step is gratitude, right? In the morning, each morning, I've got a bunch of stuff written on my wall, and one of those things is just thank you, right? Because a deep-rooted sense of gratitude is important to understand what you've been given. You've got food on your table, shelter over your head, and if you're listening to this, you've got access to the internet, right? So that we're better off than 90% of the world. I know people say this all the time, but I think it's really important to get that sense of perspective on things, because otherwise you get into this box of I should be here, I should be there, and it's constant. And I'm a victim of it myself, right? We all go through it. But I think on a macro level, to understand where we are and that deep sense of gratitude is important. And then the journey in terms of the person you are, if you can be motivated by progress. For me, it was, I started going to the gym last couple of years, and the reason I'm still committed, whether it's snowing, whether it's raining, whether I'm ill, whether I'm not ill, whatever it is down to the motivation for progress. It's not about, once I have a six-pack, I'm done. And that's basically the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, right? Tie their goals to extrinsic, i.e. external validation on their goals, will be limited. Yeah. So people that go, in the lead up to summer, go to the gym to say, right, I need to do this for a summer body. What you're actually saying to yourself, to look good for other people in summer. So what you're telling your brain is, when it gets to winter, you don't need to work out anymore because you see it. And it's a constant volatility, it's a constant fluctuation. Yeah. If you can tell yourself, like in my case, so how do I feel when I go to the gym? I'm mentally more clear. I'm more confident in my own skin. I go to the spa after the gym, so I feel great. And I have a much more productive work day because I've been to the gym. And I feel happy that I've woken up earlier because it gives me a greater sense of purpose. Now that's a much stronger motivation than I need a six-pack for summer to show people that actually I don't care about, right?
How did you change that lens though? Did you have moments where, is that a recent sort of shift of mindset, or did you always have that?
I think it took some time. The time is...
Because you had success very young. I said before, like, people raising that level of funding at that sort of age wasn't really commonplace. It is now, I would say, and a lot's changed in the last few years. But so, yeah, I'm interested to hear, like, because you were one of the first, I would say, in this country at least.
I think at the time it was a similar thing. I think I went through the journey of, right, we've raised funding, now we're successful, and I thought, hold on, that doesn't make sense, because raising funding and running a successful business are two different things. And frankly, there could be.
I'm glad you said that, because like even in Silicon Valley, like people think like continuously raising money, like that's the goal.
Exactly,
but
yeah, and
that's a different discussion.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think that's potentially the wrong goal. If you're as a means to where you need to be, great, or solving the problem, sure. But it doesn't mean you will be solving the problem, right? So I think it's having that sense or having that overview and that perspective. And I think in my case, having it quite young was based on, I think, my home life. Being a carer for my parents meant greater responsibility, greater maturity at early age. And more importantly, I think the sense of, I guess, deferred gratification. Delayed gratification, I think, is single-handedly one of the most, or the strongest qualities I've seen in great entrepreneurs that I look up to.
But it goes back to the same thing though. It's like, I completely agree with you. It's like delayed gratification is the core of every successful person I've seen. It's like you put in the work now and something will come in the end. But it's like, it goes back to the same thing we talked about. It's like, okay, how long are you going to delay till? Like, are you going to keep working? Because there's no end goal here. The end goal is so you go to the next stage and then just keep working more. Or like you change and go into something else, but you're still in that way. So like, it goes back to the same question. It's like, okay, we know that gratification is good, but like, is there a toxic side to it where you don't really find happiness in, like, because there's no sort of, like theoretically there is no gratification.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think I see what you mean. I think for me, I should say actually to agree, because there can be a point where people are doing it almost against their own will, and almost forcing themselves into it can be toxic. I should add that for me, the things that I've been pursuing within entrepreneurship, because I found that actually I like entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship for me is the only way to have a disproportionate impact on as a single person. Right?
Yeah.
To be the chief, you need to have a tribe, and the tribe works towards your mission as a chief, and that's the only way for me I think you can have a massively disproportionate impact, other than roles, for example, right? PM, president, etc. Yeah. So I think aside from that, so that's my intrinsic motivation. If I want to make a difference in the world, and that's the way to do it, then I found a lot of purpose in getting up and going to work. Like, I genuinely, and obviously they've always got bad days, but on a macro level, I'm genuinely feel purposeful in that journey. And I think that's where I think people mix up or don't see purposefulness aligned to happiness. But for me, purpose is happiness. Humans are built to walk uphill. Humans are made to face resistance, right? For me, the opposite of happiness is not unhappiness, it's boredom, right? We are built to achieve things, like built to actually push the rock up the hill. So if that's the way, for me personally, actually getting up, doing things that sometimes I don't want to do, having that sense of discipline, and feeling like at the end of the day is for me day-to-day happiness.
I agree.
But for not everyone, that's the case. Right?
I think that is for everyone, whether they've discovered it or not. I think purpose is that happiness. Like I'll talk very, very quickly because we are running out of time, but like there's a study where they analyzed happiness for people like throughout their ages. So this is a long study, like aged between sort of like 18 all the way up to 60 years old, right? So this is a very long study. They haven't really done many of these before. And they did it across like a lot of like negative shocks in your life. So someone dies, okay, your happiness goes down. Or like what else? Like it goes the other way. Like you had your firstborn, it goes up. Or like you just got a pay rise, it goes up. Like all these different things. The interesting thing was like negative shock and even positive shock. Your happiness goes up or down, but it always goes back line. Anything that didn't go back to baseline was not having a purpose. And so they described it as unemployment, but I think it's actually down to not having a purpose. which is a very interesting thing for me. So I agree with you. I think even if people maybe don't know themselves, it is boredom that's to unhappiness.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think even that journey of finding that person should be one that's embraced, right? Because if you know that purposefulness is going to give you that day-to-day micro level sense of happiness and achievement on a day-to-day basis, then embrace the journey of finding it, right? Again, remove the arrival fallacy. If I get this, then I'll get that.
Yeah.
And sometimes people spend their whole lives finding that purpose, but actually they've embraced the journey of finding it.
Yeah.
So, because I think it's difficult to say, and I think we are in this culture now where people are pressured at 17 or 18 to say, right, find your purpose, study that at university and do that for the rest of your lives. That's not always reasonable to expect, right? But if you have that sense of confidence in yourself, and my favorite quote about confidence is the belief in yourself that you'll figure it out along the way. Which is why when people say, right, you've gone from property to social technology, how sense?
Yeah.
My confidence is in my ability to figure it out along the way. I'm not saying I know the spaces. I'm confident in my abilities to figure that out. I think if people can take that same approach with purpose, and something I'll add is kind of my micro level purpose, which actually isn't based on motivation or impact on the world, a sense of duty, right? And I think I'll share this because a lot of people might see different sides to purpose. So my parents worked very hard, both of them being deaf. And I'm not coming from this country either. My dad was born in East Africa, deaf provisions in school, or no proper schooling. Came to this country, booted out of Kenya, etc. Came to this country and worked so hard to put food on my table and put a roof over my head that I genuinely feel such a strong desire, a sense of duty to give back to them. Right? Whether that's financially, whether it's by means of my service to them, whatever else it might be. And that for me was the reason I got into business in the first place, was actually not because at 17 you don't change the world necessarily, or I'm going to have such a big impact on the world. It was actually, let me look around me. I want to make a difference to these people because I'm so grateful for what they've done for me. And my original purpose, and I'd still say this is part of the fire in my belly throughout my life, hopefully, is providing for those people around me because of what they've sacrificed to make me who I am today.
That's very beautiful. But I agree with you. I think it's the same sort of journey for a lot of like first or second. I don't know how like the generations work, but like the immigration that comes. Like I think same sort of story with me as well. To be fair, like it's if you want to dig very very deep, that is the motivation of a lot of people that do certain things. So before we wrap up, I want to hear about this new company. So yeah, tech company. It's very different to what you've done before. Yeah. So as you said, like you have the confidence to go into it, willing to learn and sort of understand the space. So why did you decide to go into technology?
Yeah, absolutely. So this new company's Impact, which is the mission of the mandate of the company is much, again, more on a global scale. And when I got into this business, the question I asked myself is similar to what I asked before, right? How can I make the biggest difference in the world or the biggest impact over time? And post-pandemic, the answer to me was A, technology, and B, distributed networks. The world works in a very different way now. People work in a distributed way, healthcare, education, technology through the blockchain. So I thought, we built this company, Impact 3, which has an advisory consultancy unit and an incubator unit. The incubator unit is basically for us internally to continuously come up with ideas and continuously try to solve problems and roll that out to them. So our first and I guess our biggest project so far is One Club, which is a digital members club connecting some of the most thought-provoking leaders, entrepreneurs, athletes, creators, and people at the top of their field basically, and high performers to come together and share their learnings, to collaborate, to support each other, and more importantly, a real big social impact element. So that for me is kind of, for Impact 3, is the 20-year project where if we can gather thousands of the leaders across the world, have a core focus on social impact and personal development amongst those people, and that will trickle down and have the biggest influence on the world. But we're rolling out lots of other projects in there, and for me that was kind of the mission or the goal behind it, is lean into the future of technology is, but in a more feasible and consumer-friendly way, but build solutions around it like One Club, which are the projects that we're starting now. So yeah, super excited.
All right, nice. So what is next for everything you're doing, just so we can like wrap up the podcast?
So I think not plan too far ahead, which is great. I mean, I've got into that space where being very open-minded, very experimental. So continuing to build the businesses within Impact 3, and hopefully continuing to serve them.
Akshay, such a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Pleasure.
And first time we're actually recording in this space, so quick shout out to Brixton Village Studios. How can people stay in touch with you and what you're doing in the future?
Awesome. So best way is probably through Instagrams at Akshay Ruparelia, or on LinkedIn. So drop me a message there or give me a follow, and hopefully I can help.
All right, fantastic. Enough coming on the podcast.
Thanks, Dina.